Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce's Ukraine War News Update. First part thereof for the 29th of December 2023. I have done a breaking news update. It's on my other channel. I'll link it down below. Please go and check that out. It'll give you more detail about the massive wave of attacks that has just taken place across Ukraine last night. Indeed, with missiles, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles and Shahed drones. That is the biggest wave attack that Ukraine has seen to date. Anyway, before we get there, there isn't actually too much other news to report because that attack last night has taken up all the bandwidth of information. Nonetheless, we'll go to where we normally start. Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before, all the usual caveats apply, and you can find them in the description to this video below. 850 personnel lost is still a high number, even though it is not the top end of the range. It's not over 1,000, but 850 is still a big loss for the Russians. 13 tanks, likewise, not the top end of the range, but significant number of tanks to lose in a single day. 18 armored personnel vehicles, 26 artillery systems. So fairly high losses, again, consistently high across all of these categories. 3 multiple launch rocket systems is a high number of those, and 3 anti-aircraft warfare systems is sort of double the daily average. So it'd be interesting to see what they were. I don't know. I've not heard of anything, but that will be potentially significant for the Russians there. 35 vehicles and fuel tanks is a high number, logistics being consistently degraded, and then 7 pieces of special equipment. That may be excavators, it may be ISR equipment, so intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, sort of video cameras up a mast, or whatever. It is a wide remit for that category. Now, Mapper Andrew Perpetua has released a loss list for both sides for their equipment, and as you can see, this is a day that the Ukrainians have more of a parity with Russian losses. These days are rare. It's not quite parity, but not too far off. The Ukrainians losing a couple of ISR bits of equipment in terms of some comms towers, recovery vehicle, a boat, and then a piece of artillery, M109, and then a Stridsvagn 122A. That's the Swedish equivalent of the Leopard 2A5 tank. So that will be a high value loss there. A couple of T-64s and some civilian vehicles. So fairly high. I mean, the recovery vehicle, I don't know about the boat, what that would have been. It would have been, well, almost certainly a small dinghy crossing the Dnipro, probably. So not going to be too high value, although might well be containing personnel, and that'll be a bit of a loss. But then most of the equipment that is destroyed will have personnel associated with them. I think the recovery vehicle and that effectively that Leopard 2A5 tank, bit of a problem. So for the Russians, a couple of bits of electronic warfare. I don't know of the Article P, so that might be high value, might not be. Anyway, 2 of those lost. 1 piece of artillery, an old T-30, some T-72s, T-80 tanks, a number of infantry fighting vehicles, and then an MRAP, a Typhoon MRAP, and a few bits of civilian kit. So that is a higher value set of Russian losses than Ukrainians. There's no doubt about that. Although I think that Leopard 2A5 will sting the Ukrainians somewhat. Although that is abandoned and we don't know what the outcome. It might be recovered, it might have been subsequently destroyed, who knows. Just in terms of losses, this was interesting coming out of the BBC Daily Update. Russia suffering enormous losses, says the German military advisor. So General Christian Freuding, an advisor to the German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, says that Ukraine's military is succeeding and Russia's has suffered huge losses. Quote, 80% of Ukraine is still free. The Russian Black Sea Fleet has de facto been pushed out of the Western Black Sea, General Freuding told the Süddeutsche Zeitung newspaper. He was referring to Ukraine's attack on the Russian battleship earlier this week, which has diminished Russia's ability to launch missile strikes from the sea. Referring to recent US estimates, General Freuding says that 300,000 Russian soldiers have been killed or seriously wounded, losses he calls enormous. Russia will emerge from the war, quote, weakened, he says, but he also adds that Moscow might be able to reconstitute its forces around in around 5 to 8 years, a time frame he says should be taken into account by Western countries when determining how to maintain deterrence against Moscow. I mean, the best thing that Western forces and nations can do is to facilitate the absolute destruction of the Russian armed forces here. You almost had to go back to Machiavellian reasoning. You either completely and utterly destroy an adversary, or you conciliate with them. Anywhere in between allows them to come back with a vengeance. And so you want to invalidate Russia from being able to do that. And I think now's the time to just sew this thing up. And I think Western nations, they probably are realizing that, but it's practically how they do that, given, many of the European nations don't have the armed forces or the stockpiles that the US does. And the US is somewhat rendered impotent by an impasse in Congress. And so it's difficult. Everyone kind of knows what to do, but they're either afraid or unable to do it, politically speaking. Right. Moving on to another couple of sources. And again, this is referring back to what I talked about yesterday, but video footage of stuff going on in Sinkivka is pretty shocking for the Russians. They are losing huge amounts of equipment and indeed personnel. So this is some video footage of 5 bits of kit. This is one I was talking about, where you're going past graveyards of equipment that's already been blown up, and then you just, as you get past them, you blow up as well, and all these bits of kit, take one for Team Russia. And it's, not a good look. The Russians are just driving relentlessly into mines, ATGMs, artillery, and they are sacrificing equipment to the gods of war or the gods of incremental advance. Indeed, they're not even getting that in Sinkivka. Sinkivka appears to be an area where the Russians have failed to advance recently, whilst also ploughing in huge numbers of troops and equipment. Dimitri from World Translated posts a video of I'm just including this. It's really annoying that I can't show it because I'll get restricted. But it's just a bit of equipment in the middle of a field that suddenly blows up with the most insane explosion. It's one of these ones which has a huge shockwave, a dome shockwave that goes out from it. Anyway, it's just, as you can see there, that is a large explosion from just a single piece of kit. Whether it was absolutely laden with mines or something, I don't know. But there's some cause for a fundamental explosion. Anyway, that'll be linked in the description below if you want to go and check that out. So now we're going to get on to what I've already talked about in the breaking news video earlier. Just to very quickly go through this, so I don't want to repeat myself too much, but 158 drones and missiles were sent across into Ukraine from Russia and from occupied territories. No doubt this is the largest attack that has so far been seen, targeting Kyiv, Lviv, Odessa, Zaporizhia, Dnipropetrovsk, Kharkiv, a number of different places. Scale and coordination of attack overwhelmed air defenses. The Russian President Putin reminding Ukraine that he can still target all of it. The US latest military aid package is worth $250 million and includes ammunition for air defenses, and these have been tested very much overnight. The country's Air Force says it has never seen so many incoming missiles on its radar. That is saying something in a war where Russia has routinely targeted cities it can't occupy. Here in Kyiv, we were woken up by 3 very loud, very powerful explosions. That's a rarity in this part of the city now, where the air defenses have significantly improved. However, it seems the scale and coordination of the attack has overwhelmed them. There's also this idea that actually a lot of the missiles that were shot down landed in the city areas, in the urban areas. And so you see, damned if you do, damned if you don't. You either let the missile take its course and hit its intended target, or you shoot it down. And if you shoot it down, it then goes off to hit something else. And so there was a number of missiles have hit residential buildings, and you're wondering, was that the intended target? Maternity hospital hit, I think, in Dnipro. Was that the intended target, or was that a result of shooting them down? So the makeup of the missiles, actually Max 23's got one here, but I'm going to go to even more detailed one than this. But 87 cruise missiles, 27 Shahed Shaheeds shot down. The headline figures there is 87 out of 90 plus KH-101 cruise missiles were shot down. So that's a pretty good interception rate. They routinely do get shot down fairly easily. 27 out of 36 Shahed drones. That still has allowed 9 drones to get through air defenses to find whatever target they were aiming for. Now, here's the most detailed breakdown I've seen. So 87 out of 90 or 97% essentially KH-101 cruise missiles. So that's a really good interception rate. Kinzhal, so 5 of these hypersonic Dagger missiles, these Kinzhal missiles, 0 out of 5, so that's 0%. 0 out of 14 ballistic missiles. That is a poor interception rate for those missiles too. So that's going to be S-300s, S-400s, sort of surface-to-air missiles being used in their ground attack mode, and then 0 out of 8 KH-22 missiles and 0 out of 5 KH-31P or KH-59 missiles. So you've got this idea that ballistic missiles are proving to be very difficult to shoot down, and about 75% of Shahed drones, 27 out of 36. So 9 getting through. Now, all of these ones that weren't shot down will have found some kind of target, you would have thought, or not necessarily all of them, because some of these S-300, S-400 missiles used in their ground attack mode can be inaccurate. We don't know of what the targets that were hit were. We don't know whether they were military targets that were successfully hit, because Ukraine keeps that information fairly close to its chest. So you can imagine that there were some significant targets taken out by the Russian attack as the air defenses were overwhelmed. The question is, as I asked previously, why wait this time? I gave you all the reasons in the breaking news update. I did forget to say, of course, that the Feodosia strike on the Novichokazk large landing ship potentially took out a number of drones, supposedly or possibly some drones. That's a rumor. Some Shahed drones were on board with thermobaric warheads. Now, that could explain why there wasn't like a massive wave of Shahed drones prior to this to exhaust air defenses. There was, you can see there, 36 drones used there, but last night, the night before, I don't remember there being a particularly large wave, which you would expect if they're waiting to release this huge wave of missiles. So anyway, go and check my breaking news update to listen to some of the analysis there. So just to let you know, there's plenty of footage coming out of that's a missile hitting the top of a building, probably a result of it being shot down by air defenses. There's Zaporizhia, buildings destroyed, tram covered in debris. You've got the maternity hospital in Dnipro after being hit by a rocket. Don't know if that's the intended target. You've got the maternity hospital from a different angle there, so on and so forth. There's just a lot of damage right across Ukraine. Also, another medical institution damaged in Kharkiv. Kyiv saying that 36 aerial targets were hit by air defense over Kyiv. So Kyiv probably took a quarter of all of the drones and missiles. And as a result, even if they shoot down most or all of them, that will cause a lot of damage to Kyiv, obviously. And just, the footage going around, there's more footage of the building in Odessa. So this is a building in Odessa here that was hit, that has some really fundamental damage done to it. Huge apartment block. Actually, there's some CCTV footage or similar that shows the impact of that on the building from the side, from someone else in that building further along. It's just, really horrific stuff. Footage of the Russian cruise missile hitting Dnipro in the daytime. There's, I think is it in Dnipro where there is a it's this place here. So this shopping centre in Dnipro, outside there are dead bodies on the floor, and the footage is pretty pretty harsh of, people being propped up who are very badly injured, and then definitely dead bodies lying around, and it's not nice. None of this is nice, because it's all the footage that's coming out for obvious reasons is the footage concerning civilian or commercial infrastructure, and it just makes Russia look like the moral monsters that they are, invading another country and just continually bombarding them, such that this kind of stuff happens. It's not cool at all. So this is Anton Gerashchenko quoting Yuri Ignat here, who's the spokesman for the Ukrainian Air Forces. We saw Kinzhal missiles, ballistic missiles, S-300 and cruise missiles, and we saw the use of Shahed drones flying from the southeast. They launched X-22 or X-32 missiles. About 18 Tu-95 strategic bombers were also used. According to preliminary information, Russia traditionally uses X-101 and X-555 missiles. We have not seen so much red on our monitors for a long time in all regions, in all directions. First, the occupiers conducted reconnaissance with Shahed drones. Then they launched missiles of various types. Traditionally, they circled around the places where they could be shot down and thus hit targets, he added. It's pretty controversial, to say the least. And as War Translated, as I said earlier, so Russia, with its capabilities, is freely allowed to bomb the Ukrainian civilian infrastructure anytime they desire, but Ukraine is not being provided critical military aid to defend its own land because its range may hit Russian mainland. Insane. But hey, what goes around comes back around, he says. And then we have, I have lost that bit of news. Let me find it. Oh, well, lost it. Nonetheless, this then concerns Poland. So what's all that about? Well, in fact, that's what I had lined up. Let's find that, because I know where that is. So an unidentified object was spotted in Polish airspace, which came from the direction of Ukraine. It was tracked from the moment it crossed the border until the signal of the country's air defense system disappeared, the Polish army said. That has prompted Duda to call, so he's the president, to call an urgent meeting with the military leadership after the violation of airspace, probably Russian missile, according to Republika. So we've heard that before, but it ended up some time back, if you remember, right near the beginning of the war, it being a Ukrainian air defense missile that landed in Poland and killed a couple of people. It was all controversial, but of course, you don't need to fire air defense missiles if you're not being attacked by Russia. And I had someone spreading disinformation on my thread on my breaking news video. It's just a Russian troll, and I deleted the comment. I'm starting to get a little bit fed up of people spreading outright lies, and that was just a comment full of lies. I'm like, nah. I don't want disinformation here. It is an issue, and that's not making things better. But anyway, so Poland getting a little bit annoyed about that. Meanwhile, US ambassador says Ukraine urgently needs funding after a massive Russian attack. Quote, Ukraine needs funding now to continue its fight for freedom, according to US ambassador to Ukraine, Bridget Brink, saying that in a social media post today following the massive wave of Russian strikes on Ukrainian cities. And actually, Michael Weiss then responded to that, who's a journalist with a lot of expertise with the Ukraine war. Expect calls for more defensive weapons, particularly air defense, which is badly needed, of course. But don't lose sight of Kyiv's need for better offensive systems. It's a good day for Berlin to send Taurus and Washington, D.C. to send 300-kilometer range ATACMS. Absolutely agree with that. Absolutely. And it's really frustrating when Ukraine can't hit these missiles at source. So they can't hit the planes that are releasing them or the bases where the planes take off, because when we give them weapons, you're only allowed to use them inside Ukraine. Well, as Dmitry from War Translated says, how is that fair? Like, if these guys can send up Tu-95 bombers, release these missiles en masse, and they absolutely wreak havoc all over Ukraine, and Ukraine is unable to strike those aircraft when they take up, or in their airbase before they take off. When they take off and then deliver those missiles, they can't shoot those missiles down in Russian airspace, or they can't shoot those airplanes down in Russian airspace. It's completely unfair. Ukraine are fighting this war with one arm tied behind their back. Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas, who's a staunch supporter of Ukraine, said that the massive Russian missile attack on Ukraine is a reminder that Kremlin's goals to destroy Ukraine have not changed. And this is indeed her tweet. Russia launched the largest attack yet against Ukraine, targeting civilians. A war crime on a massive scale. True. A reminder for the new year that Russia's aims haven't changed. It wants to destroy Ukraine. Not letting aggression pay off is crucial for European and global security. Yes, if we all did what the Baltics are doing, Ukraine would prevail, and would prevail quickly. Right, yesterday there was also attacks on Kherson, just in terms of shelling. Another civilian block was hit, apartment blocks, flats in the centre of the city. Fires broke out, but miraculously only one person needed hospital treatment, a 92-year-old woman suffering from smoke inhalation. Again, this is not cool. Again, Russia are just indiscriminately hitting civilian infrastructure. Okay, it might not be missiles shot down by air defense systems, but this is shelling into a city that is supposedly a Russian city. According to the Russians, who have annexed this area, Kherson city is a Russian city. These civilians living in Kherson are Russian civilians, and they are shelling them. It's just absolutely shocking. Right, moving on to other bits and pieces, and we have seen footage like this before, but I like to show stuff like this. It makes everyone feel a bit better about Ukrainian predicament. There's support from others here. We have UK soldiers escorting Ukrainian soldiers out of a base. Well, not really escorting them, but parading them out of a base. I guess it's nice to see stuff like this and respect that the trainers have. I'll take that music off, but the respect the trainers have for the trainees. And here we have something nice about pictures like this. I recognise British grass and British tarmac and British roads and British red brick buildings in the back. All of this is so eminently recognisable. All the signs, all the speed bumps there. So yeah, it's good to see the all of these soldiers lining up to give the Ukrainians their send-off. Good stuff. Hopefully they've had useful training there. Now, here's a Eurominded press article talking about how the Russians have covered up the true loss of the human cost, in terms of the human cost of the floodings after the Novokakhovka Dam exploded. Russian occupation authorities have deliberately undercounted the number of people killed in deadly floods in Kherson Oblast, which were caused as a result of the Novokakhovka Dam, or the Kakhovka Dam destruction by Russian troops, according to an Associated Press investigation. Russia has said 59 people drowned in the territory it controls, roughly 408 square kilometers of flooded areas. However, in the town of Oleshki alone, which Ukrainian military officials estimate had a population of 16,000 at the time of the flooding, the number is at least in the hundreds. So that's one town has a death toll of hundreds. The exact number of those who were killed in the city may never be known, even if Ukrainian forces retake the territory, as Russia took away unidentified bodies and supposedly buried them in mass graves, according to the sources in Oleshki. Moreover, when the Russian military blew up the dam on June the 6th and the water began submerging entire communities across the region, the Russian appointed administration in Kherson told residents not to be alarmed. As occupation authorities informed the residents of Kherson Oblast that the, quote, situation is not critical. Many of them went about their normal day, walking dogs, going to work and staying at home. Later, as the water began to rise quickly, the people clung to their chimneys, waiting to be saved, and authorities apparently fled, as well as police and prosecutors earlier appointed by Moscow. Indeed, there was imagery of Ukrainians helping people, civilians in the Russian-occupied areas, dropping drones, and I think even getting the occasional boat across to help them and get them to safety. And the Russians were not doing that themselves. Anyway, moving on to the final bit to share with you. Putin sends revenge squads into Crimea after the destruction of the warship. So as the Novorossiysk was destroyed the other day in Feodosia, there were ramifications for partisans who were supposedly giving information to the Ukrainians. So Putin has allegedly sent revenge squads into occupied Crimea to hunt the resistance fighters who may have given Ukraine the location of the now destroyed Novorossiysk warship. I mean, to be honest, you can use satellite imagery there. The flywheel of repression is spinning, says Atesh, a pro-Kiev Crimean Tatar guerrilla group. It reported that Moscow-installed authorities had raided properties and confiscated residents' smartphones as they searched for possible collaborators with the Ukrainian military in a recent missile attack on a vessel. Quote, it is reported that Putin is completely furious over the destruction of the Novichokazk large landing ship, Atesh said. An order was issued to punish the Crimean Air Defense Forces. It is expected that many commanders will be removed and sent to the front to participate in assault groups, the partisans added in a post on the Telegram messaging app. The Novichokazk was destroyed using British-made Storm Shadow cruise missiles fired from a Ukrainian supersonic Sukhoi Su-24 fighter jet early on Tuesday, so on and so forth. It was reported by Ukraine's Air Force that the ship has been destroyed along with 13 Iranian-made Shahed kamikaze drones that were on board. So only interesting that there's now a number put to that. At least 52 men from the 77 believed to be serving on the ship have been reported missing or injured, according to Russian outlet Astra, but military analysts have speculated that as many as 100 people could have been killed in the attack. So again, Russians covering up the number of deaths there. Okay, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe and share. I really appreciate all your support. Take care, and I'll speak to you in a second. A news piece coming soon.